Dalton against Sam, the incumbent All Black captain, against a pretty informed Dalton Papalii. Who would you have in the number 7 jersey for the All Blacks? Maybe you wouldn't have either. Maybe you'd have Ethan Blackadder, or maybe even move Ardie Savea to number 7. Tom Christie's been in pretty good form for the Crusaders. Duplessis Kirifi. Let's go through and have a look at some numbers. Mainly looking at Sam and Dalton. But we'll also chuck in the other guys where relevant. And you guys can let me know your thoughts on who your preferred option would be. As I record this, we are the end of the Super Rugby regular season, awaiting the playoffs. Sam Cane is currently injured with a minor injury, so he's sitting out the quarterfinals. Dalton, I believe, is fit. And yeah, we are going to go through some stats. Stats, keep in mind, I always say this with the stats kind of deep dive vids, that it's team sports. You got to take them with a bit of context. I don't think stats are worthless. Some people don't look at rugby stats as worth much at all. Certainly not like baseball. I think rugby, they can tell you something, but it's certainly not like the full story, right? Like the Chiefs guys tend to have more passes than everyone else because the Chiefs have more possession. Some teams like the Blues actually got a lot more tackles than everyone else because they're playing with not that much possession. So there's a lot of context to be had, but I still think we can get kind of a general idea from the way these guys play from the numbers we are about to see. Right, we're going to start with some ball-in-hand stats, primarily when these guys are making carries. Who's been the more effective ball carrier between Sam and Dalton? And then we'll chuck in the other guys a little bit for context. So, if you want pure number of carries in terms of work rate, then your man is Sam Cane between him and Dalton. 6.1 carries a game compared to Dalton's 4.5. So Sam has made genuinely more carries than Dalton across the season. However, every other factor, Dalton mops the floor with Sam. His ball carrying has just been far more effective. He's doubling the amount of run meters that Sam has had on average per game. Well, not quite doubling, but almost 12.5 for Sam, just over 24 meters for Dalton. So Dalton's getting more bang for his buck. He's getting more meters out of fewer carries. He's had more run meters total. He's getting more meters per carry. More defenders beaten 17-6. More clean breaks 4-2. Just in terms of X factor with the ball, Dalton is your guy. I mean, they both scored 2 tries, but Dalton is your guy. If you're including the other guys, like Duplessis Kirifi is kind of middle of the road. Ethan Blackadder is also kind of middle of the road. Tom Christie is your weakest guy. He's scored 3 tries, but he doesn't have the greatest ball carrying stats in terms of being able to rack up run meters and whatnot. But Ardie Savea is the gold standard. Ardie Savea has got the most run meters, the most average run meters, the most average carries, the most defenders beaten. I mean, he's been playing number 8, so he should be getting his hand on the pill a bit more. But I'm just chucking him in that conversation because, you know, he's kind of also in the conversation for number 7 for the All Blacks. But I think with Cane there, they're realistically playing him at 8. But just beside the point, for context, there you go. If you want mostly bang for your buck stuff, apart from number of carries, Dalton is your guy. But what about defensively? Because that's where I'm always arguing that Sam Cane makes the difference, right? He's often the Chiefs' top tackler. Has he done more than Dalton in the season thus far? Not really. Keeping in mind that the Blues guys make more tackles. So Dalton's made more tackles than Sam Cane. He's averaging over 14 tackles a game. Sam Cane's down at 11. And Dalton's percentage completion rate is phenomenal. It's 97%. He's missed 5 tackles the whole competition. Whereas Sam's missed 16. So he's actually the worst of the 6 guys I've looked at with 87%. For context, Ardie's second at 95 and the other guys are either 93 or 92. So Sam's a wee bit below everyone else. Tackling percentage can be a little bit misleading as well because sometimes they're genuinely just trying to shoot out of the line and maybe make guys' lives a bit more miserable, maybe slow them down more than stop them, but obviously you want to make tackles if you can. The one area Sam Cane does outshine Dalton is turnovers 1. He's made 7. Dalton's made 5. That's not including at the line-out time. That's just a tackle or breakdown. So Sam does have the edge in turnovers. Dalton has the edge in tackles. If you want pure tackling, your guy is Tom Christie. He makes more tackles than anyone. he's got the most tackles in the competition. Like, he's an absolute tackling machine, and he's also a turnover machine. So tackles and turnovers, pure defensive stats, Tom Christie would be your guy. Ethan Blackadder is also kind of middle of the road. Interestingly, Ardie is low on the tackle count, but high on the turnover count, and du Plessis is kind of middle of the road as well. What about ball handling in terms of like playmaking? I wasn't sure how this one would go, but wow, Sam Cane has way more involvements in a game than Dalton in this one. Sam Cane's passing the ball more than 7 times a game. Dalton's less than 2. Less than 2 passes a game. So Sam is certainly a key part in a lot of what the Chiefs are doing, even if you don't really notice it, right? Even if it's just little kind of pop passes, he offloads more than anybody else. But interestingly, that's only by the total. If you're looking at the amount of offloads a guy makes as part of his overall passing game, it's actually Dalton. Like, Dalton doesn't pass much, but like 1/3 of the time it's an offload. So he's always looking for the offload, but just not getting his hands on the ball that much. Sam's got 3 try assists. Dalton's got 1. So yeah, Sam a lot more passes. 72 passes across the campaign to 17 for Dalton. So whether that's kind of a key stat for your number 7, I'll leave that to you guys. But yeah, certainly Sam has been a key man in that department, whereas Dalton a little bit more passive. A kind of secondary stat for Lucy's, I guess, is your lineouts. Neither Sam or Dalton is particularly involved. I think Dalton's won 4 lineouts, Sam's won 3. They're not really getting many lineout steals. So yeah, it's kind of a very much a secondary or tertiary part of their game. The other guys, man, as I mentioned, Ardie Savea is kind of the gold standard if you're looking at passing. He gets a load of passes, he gets offloads. He also wins a lot of lineouts, so he gets his hands on the ball basically whenever he can. Ethan Blackadder is the key lineout guy of all these guys we're looking at. He's won more lineouts than any of them. Tom Christie, again, is kind of at the back of the pack in terms of passes and lineouts. Like, he's barely involved. He's got less involvements than most of them. He passes a little bit more than Dalton, but yeah, he doesn't have any try assists. Yeah, his offload rate's really low. So yeah, he's probably the least impactful in that department, where you see Ethan and du Plessis are kind of in the middle of the road again. Discipline is the last one we're going to look at. Penalties conceded. This is another area where Sam Cane actually looks pretty good, because he's only conceded 6 penalties. Half a penalty a game, so a penalty every 2 games. Whereas Dalton is actually the worst in terms of his discipline, conceding on average a penalty a game. So it's another one of those ones, man, where if you're looking at your tackle involvements, you're more likely to get pinged. If you're looking at turnovers, Sam's got more without getting pinged, so that could be a beneficial one, a little bit more of that kind of risk-reward. Also, turnovers conceded. Maybe this is because Dalton doesn't pass that much, but he's actually been a bit of a safer pair of hands. He's less likely to cough up the pill than Sam, but going with that kind of passing rate being a lot lower, that kind of makes sense. The other guys are all kind of middle of the road in terms of their discipline. Ardie Savea has also not conceded that many penalties, so it's a hard one to compare him when he has largely been playing number 8, but yeah, he's only conceded 5 penalties across the whole comp. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting split. For mine, I would say the numbers that I'm more interested in would lead me to say that Dalton is the form 7, because I'm more interested in getting guys who've got a huge work rate in terms of his tackling and more effective ball carrying than I am the passing. But it just really depends how you want to use these guys. It's a bit of a chess game, right? Depends who you want to pair these guys with. One thing you can't deny about Sam Cane is his work rate is still pretty phenomenal. Whatever aspect he's in, he's never like the last guy in terms of like tackles made, carries made, passes made. He's getting involved in pretty much everything. There's not one category where he's really lagging behind. Whereas, Dalton, like I mentioned, just he's the last guy by passing by a mile. Like 17 passes. The next is like 43. So, yeah, but like I said, rugby's a team game. It depends how you want to kind of shift these pieces around. But what do you guys reckon? How would you line up your back row for the All Blacks? I think Ardie Savea is a must. Do you think he pairs better with a guy at 7 like a Papalii, or do you think Kane with that familiarity? Either way, both these guys are top cracking players. I'd probably be happy with either, but yeah, you guys do let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.